And now we have a opening to 2016 that has had the Chinese markets, casinos, in turmoil. And this has had a knock-on effect to other markets, casinos all around the world. And you add in the collapse in the oil price, which in any sane society, any sane economy should be a good thing. But in this nonsense, in this ludicrous economic madhouse that we have foisted upon us, apparently it's a bad thing. And the question for many people will be, well, why do you want to crash the economy? What's planned is what's planned, what is unfolding before our eyes, is what I've termed the Hunger Games society. This is being manipulated from the shadows, and it's been going on for a long, long time. And this is the plan. You have an elite of less than 1% of the world population dictating everything through a world government, world central bank, world army, a microchip population. That's what this transhumanism is all about. And you then have not the working classes as it's been up to this point. You have the vast majority of the rest of the population subjugated by this less than 1% in abject poverty and servitude and slavery. That's the plan. And then in the middle, between the elite less than 1% and the poverty-stricken masses, you have the police state, the merciless police state, imposing upon the masses the will of the less than 1%. Now, I've been going on about this for so long, and every day it moves further forward. Now, what you need to do to bring about that structure, that situation, is to part the vast majority of the world's population from their money, from their wealth, from their, as far as it goes, means of independence, control of their lives. And what we've seen up to this point is when say a banking system is crashed, governments, i.e. the people, come along and bail out the banks. And what they do then, and we've seen that since 2008, what they call a bailout is actually a transfer of responsibility, financial responsibility for the crash, which was the work of the banks and the hidden hand behind the financial system. The responsibility is moved from the banks via governments to the population, who were subjected to the consequences of what the banks have done. Look at what's happened since 2008. You had the crash in the banking system. You had banks and major insurance companies, etc., in trouble, desperate trouble, on the brink of collapse trouble. And then we had this massive bailout by governments. Stage one, the problem, the responsibility for the problem is transferred from the banks who caused it to the governments that helped cause it by removing regulation. And so now the government is holding the responsibility for the bank's behavior. And then, next stage, that is transferred to vast numbers of the population in what's called austerity. We've got no money, we've had to bail out the banks, we've got no money, we can't pay for you to have the basics of life. Wars? Oh yeah, we've got money for them. Total scam, all of it. But even at that stage, we still have great numbers of people who are not in the less than 1%, who are still all right. They still have what a lot of people would call a lot of money, a lot of wealth. You have a lot more people who are, we're okay. But if they're not part of the less than 1%, they want their money too. They want them in economic servitude. So how can they do that? That is where not the bailout, but the bail-in comes in. And it all really started with the banking crash in Cyprus in 2013, when instead of governments bailing out the banks, they said above a certain amount, which is guaranteed within the European Union, 100,000 euros at the time, anything above that was fair game for the banks to take from their own depositors to be bailed out. And a lot of people who were, by most standards, had a lot of money, had a lot less when that process in Cyprus was over. Because much of what they had above the guaranteed 100,000 euros was just taken, gone, blink of an eye. And this set the precedent, absolutely on purpose, all planned all along. And now we have a situation where they're saying any more banking crashes and the bail-in is what will be used to respond to it. And at the start of January in Britain, the amount of money guaranteed in banks for depositors by the government was reduced from £85,000 to £75,000. And then when the bail-ins come in, anything above that will be fair game to be taken, because you put money in a bank. What does that mean? It just means that you've given your money to the bank and you are an unsecured creditor. That's what you are as a depositor. So this bail-in is a means to steal the wealth of people who at the moment are feeling they're all right, because they are in the gun sights of all this because of the Hunger Games society and the poverty-stricken slave masses that I'm talking about. The financial system has been created from the start so that a few can control the many. Think of all the things you'd like to do in your life if you could really make any choice. And invariably, if you can't do it, it will be because you don't have enough money. So money, control of money, equals choice. Control of money and how you earn money and how money is shared out dictates your basic freedom. Whether you've got to be somewhere at this time in the morning until this time in the afternoon, doing something you absolutely hate day after day just to earn the money to survive. The financial system has been systematically created to impose global slavery. And now what I'm talking about with these manufactured crashes and the bail-ins is to take that on and on and on until we reach the Hunger Games society situation that I described a few minutes ago. So when you look at the financial system, first of all, banks are lending money, he said in quotes, called credit, that has never, does not, and will never exist as a real substance, a real something. It's just figures on a screen. And you not only are borrowing figures on a screen, money out of fresh air, called credit, you have to pay the banks for it in what we call interest. There are many, many things that come from this. First of all, banks are allowed to lend 10 times and more. It's actually many more in truth, but at least 9, 10 times what they have on deposit. It's called fractional reserve lending. Every time you put a pound or a dollar in a bank, you're giving it the right to lend 9 or 10 it doesn't have, called credit. And so when you go to a bank for a loan, say $50,000, all the bank is doing is typing into your account $50,000, pulled out of fresh air under the ludicrous rules of fractional reserve lending. How did this come about? As I've been exposing in the books for years and years and years, the same force that owns the banks owns the governments that make the laws that affect the banks. That's how it works.